To see your fragrance being copied and blatantly copied to the point where people are even copying the packaging, the design. As a brand owner and a business, you are allowed to feel frustrated by that. I'm sure he's paid handsomely for the work he does, but that doesn't mitigate the fact that there is some frustration involved in someone just coming along and just copying your fragrance. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Gids, and today I thought I would do an interesting video. I thought I would talk about the psychology of a dupe in the sense of looking at dupes, dupe fragrances, the arguments for people who wear them, who believe that there is nothing wrong with wearing them, and those that do not wear them and why they do not choose to wear them. I just wanted to touch on this subject because there is so much at the moment being spoken about when it comes to the subject of dupes. You know, people who wear dupes, people who love them, people who feel there's nothing wrong with buying dupes, and it almost feels like the world of buying dupes and the dupe fragrance world, if that's the right terminology for it, is just expanding and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, I know on TikTok there is a lot of people who do talk about dupe fragrances and fragrances which are dupes of niche fragrances, designer fragrances, and there are a lot of people who love and consume that content. I mean, there are so many dupes, and it is very interesting, this world of dupes. It's fascinating, and I feel that there are such strong opinions from people who wear dupes. Now, the reason I think this whole subject is so relevant at the moment is because for those that don't know, there was an interview I think done with Francis Kirk-Dijon, who owns Maison Francis Kirk-Dijon, and he was essentially expressing his views that he feels that dupes is copying, it's stealing, it's wrong, it's morally wrong in his opinion. And so many people in the fragrance community, fragrance lovers, were very quick to come and to basically reply and say, what on earth are you talking about? You know, you are charging this extortionate amount for your fragrances. It's not fair. And some of your fragrances don't even perform that well. These dupes perform better. And there was all this discourse around his comments and what he said, which was so interesting. And I found myself really observing like people's opinions on dupes, and there was a lot of sort of defending the idea of buying a dupe. And I feel we're at a point now where for a lot of people, they have no hesitation about buying a dupe. And it almost feels like things are really changing. There was a time, I suppose, when it might have been frowned upon to publicly say, oh, I own many dupes or I buy dupes. Now it's almost seems like a badge of honor, like, well, I didn't waste my money on the expensive niche version. I got the dupe, and guess what? It lasts even longer and it's a tenth of the price. It also then blends into sort of like a moral issue, I suppose, where Francis Kirk-Dijon is coming from, because essentially a lot of people were saying he doesn't have a leg to stand on charging the kind of prices he does. And I totally understand that argument. I don't agree with it. I understand it. I do think that niche prices of fragrances are insane. The price of these fragrances are insane. I mean, you smell a fragrance and you look up the price, and sometimes it's it's eye-watering, and even when you get a good deal or a discount, it's still a lot of money to pay. I mean, if you think about the Rogers and so many other brands, that their price points are so high. Personally, for me, I have bought dupes in the past. I mean, I have one here. This is a dupe of Oud for Greatness. This is Oud for Glory. This is the original. I mean, the original here in the UK retails for about £300 now, I would say. And this one, which is the dupe, retails probably around the £30 sort of mark. So literally a tenth of the price. And okay, they do smell quite similar. Longevity is completely different. I find the longevity on this one is about 3 hours, whereas this one is beastly. It's beastly. It really does fill a room and it lasts forever. However, with that said, I think the main thing about the argument for a lot of people is they feel as though Francis Kirk de Jean is being very arrogant, and how dare he say this when, first of all, you can't really patent a fragrance formula. You know, you can patent maybe, I think he said, for example, like you can, you know, if you steal the trademark of a designer handbag, that company can go after you and sue you because there's like trademarks, etc., and there is patents and things like that. A lot of people were trying to simply say that's different when it comes to fragrance, because you can't create copyright laws for fragrance formulas. And some people even compared it to recipes, like food recipes. Okay, this is where it gets a bit sort of in muddy territory, because technically, yes, you can't patent or trademark a fragrance formula, but you have to understand the frustration when you have, it doesn't matter, you could be an indie brand, for example, and you can create a really amazing fragrance. And to see your fragrance being copied and blatantly copied to the point where people are even copying the packaging, the design. As a brand owner and a business, you are allowed to feel frustrated by that. And where I think a lot of people may have misunderstood that is, Francis has a right to feel the way he feels. You know, he has a right to have that feeling of frustration as someone who's created that fragrance. Now, you may say, okay, but he works for LVMH, he's owned by LVMH, he's the head perfumer at Dior. Fair enough, I'm sure he's paid handsomely for the work he does, but that doesn't mitigate the fact that there is some frustration involved in someone just coming along and just copying your fragrance. I mean, when I sit and think about it, I'm in the creative arts myself, and so I do have a bit of compassion when people's work is taken, rejigged, and then they're not credited for that work. And that is very, very frustrating as an artist. Now, going back to the price of the niche perfumes, I get it. It's very, very tempting to buy these dupe fragrances, and there are so many of them. I literally cannot keep up. And I think what's really interesting is how quickly these brands can come up with a dupe for any fragrance that suddenly becomes popular. So you've got, you know, your Louis Vuitton, what's the really popular one that all the men are wearing at the moment? It's the really popular one in the blue, Imagination. So Imagination, there are about 4 or 5 different dupes of that fragrance. And then Guidance, you have from Amouage, you have about maybe 3 different dupes of that fragrance. And then the Delinas, and then not to mention the Baccarat Rouge. I mean, that is in a whole different territory of its own. And, you know, I get it. Even Francis Kirk de Jean has made very similar perfumes from Baccarat Rouge for like Burberry Her. There is a similarity in the way that smells with Baccarat Rouge 540. But at the same time, you have to understand he's the perfumer. He can take his work and recreate it and reformulate things and make things different. And another argument I heard was from somebody who said he even dupes fragrances, or he even copies fragrances. For example, Bois Talisman, which is Dior's latest fragrance, smells a lot like By the Fireplace from Dior. Whatever line of the argument or whatever side of the fence you're on, I just wish people could see both sides of the argument. Now, as I said, me personally, I bought dupes in the past? Yes, a couple. Will I continue? Not really, it's not really for me. I don't really like inspired fragrances. That's just my personality. I just prefer to own the original. It's just like a replica or something. I just don't buy replicas, or if I want it and I can't necessarily afford it in that given time, I'll buy the best of what I can afford with my money, what my money will let me buy, what my money can stretch and afford to buy, or I will just wait until I can afford it. Now, there are some lovely fragrances on my radar at the moment that I would love to purchase that are very, very pricey and a very, very high price point. Like, if I was to buy these fragrances, I think it would be the most I probably spent on a fragrance. However, I don't think for me I would want to seek out the dupe, because there's something so magical and special about the original for me, which the dupe doesn't always capture. Now, I know some people will say, yeah, but not every dupe is trying to be an exact copy of the fragrance. I've heard this argument as well, and I completely understand that. But for me personally, I still feel morally there's some sense of it doesn't feel morally right for me to just buy all these dupe fragrances. That's just me personally. I know these brands don't care about me, they don't know about me, but I would rather my money go to a beautiful original fragrance. And yes, these original niche fragrances, I've heard another argument that they don't last as long as the dupes. I'm not that fussed about longevity. For me, when I think about a fragrance, and I get it, I know for a lot of people, one of the deal breakers is longevity and how far and wide a fragrance can project and last, the sillage and all that stuff. I understand that when you're spending that kind of money. But for me, what I really consider when it comes to a really beautifully well-crafted fragrance is how well-rounded the fragrance is in general. You can have a fragrance which is exceptionally beautifully blended, doesn't necessarily last as long as perhaps the inspired version. However, the inspired version may not be as refined, as well-rounded and high quality. That's what I'm trying to say. With that said, share your thoughts on this subject down below. It really seems to irk people one way or another. And there was also another video from the creative director of Maison Crivelli discussing Oud Maracuja. And he was essentially just saying that a lot of brands have tried to now use passion fruit in their fragrance, like mixed passion fruit and oud. And they are creating these dupes, which are nasty dupes. He was a bit harsh maybe in the language. Maybe he was coming from frustration. But I found that conversation really interesting, and I found the comments on that video really, really interesting. A lot of people were like, just get off your high horse. Who do you think you are? You've got no right to feel this way. And for me, that is the part that makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, is when we invalidate people's feelings on something and not try to understand, well, this is how I feel on it. That's how you feel. We're just gonna have to agree to disagree. I'm gonna keep buying my dupe. You can keep putting out that fragrance. I'm not gonna buy it. I don't know, I just feel sometimes people can be very, very harsh in the way that they respond to how people feel. But yeah, with that said, guys, leave me your comments down below. Why is this such a controversial subject? But there are so many dupes, it's insane. I'm not in the world of dupes, not to be dismissive. It's just, I'm not really well versed on dupes, maybe because I don't seek them out. But I find it so fascinating, all the opinions and the discourse around the whole psychology of a dupe. What do you think? Leave a comment down below, like I said, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe to my channel, and I'll speak to you very, very soon. Take care.